Hello, hello, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of this, the iRacing Skip Barber 2K World Cup, this time coming at you from a new track on the iRacing service, that is Hockenheim. I certainly can't wait to get this event started. I'm standing by in the commentary booth here with the one, the only Nolan Rempel as well. Fantastic day for racing here in Germany, and well, we'll continue to get the ball rolling here in this year's championship of the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. It's great to come to this track for the first time in series history, Nolan. It should be a fantastic event, a track that really promotes these sorts of slipstream overtaking that we love to see here in these Skip Barber machines. And I gotta say, down into that hairpin is going to be some crazy times.
I think some crazy times is definitely going to be an understatement here for this one. Hockenheim is one of those tracks that definitely has always promoted these draft-heavy overtakes, even from its first inception back before, of course, Herbert Tilke did the renditions in the early 2000s, but this is still a track that definitely races well, and there is no track better to test out just how powerful the draft can be in some of the sections on this place than the Skip Barber Formula 2000s.
Yeah, let's have a little look at the standings as we're heading into this round. Kane Halliburton leads the way, 289 points to his name. Sam Keita with a good result last time out. He gets up second place with 262. Diogo Francisco in third. Philippe Lebert in fourth. Simon Edwards in fifth there with 239. Alexis Vico 223. Everything's still relatively close in the grand scheme of things here, Nolan, especially since we're only still in these first couple of rounds of the season. There's still ample opportunity for that order to change by the time we get to the end of this year. But to see things this close at the very early stages is a very positive sign.
Well, it certainly is. It's a great sign to see these guys definitely still staying nice and close, and this is obviously going to be one of those championships that still has a lot of room to ebb and flow as the season goes on, and it could very well come right down to the wire in that very last race, and quite possibly to the very last corners of that final race as well.
Yep, it could well do. We've had a great many grandstand finishes already here in the 2K series. There's no reason why we can't have a similar one here today as well. But drivers are going to be heading out there for their one and only lap of qualifying here. That's just the system here in the 2K Championship. You only get that one lap to work with in qualifying. If you don't get it done, then if you step a foot out of line, you get yourself an instant point, then you can say bye-bye to your chances at any good starting point on the grid.
Those slight little mistakes are definitely one of those things you got to look out for. And at a track like Hockenheim, it is very, very easy to be lulled into a false sense of security. Just look at the straightaway and look at how wide it is for the Skip Barber Formula 2000s as these drivers start to set themselves up here for their one and only qualifying laps. It's a track that it is still quite clinical in some sections, particularly through turn number one. Very, very easy to run wide through the turn one kink. But it's also a track that you still have to be right on your toes, despite how easy some parts of the track are as well.
Yep, you really have to keep your wits about you. Drivers, of course, on their outlap here at the moment. So you see Anthony Cat in the number 25 machine, just weaving across the circuit a little bit, trying to get some temperature into those tires, get the pressures up to where he wants them to be able to go absolutely flat out on the one and only qualifying lap. That's why we are very restricted in terms of the time we have to run in this session as well. Pretty much everyone out there, with the exception of Gonzalo Calvo, Hans Hoyer, Alfredo Malo, and Simone Zamolo. Those are cars that are not currently out there on outlaps at the moment. Maybe they're waiting for a little bit later on in the session to get out there and set themselves those qualifying laps. Having a look further down the field, you have there's Philippe Lebert on his outlap here. Just coming through these couple of right-handers before he starts the lap here, Nolan. Of course, you have this very, very short run indeed in towards turn number one. And it's not the traditional turn number one, it's a very, very fast right-hander, so very untraditional for the first turn.
Not to mention, the track narrows up so much as well. I mean, you go from being about 3-4 lanes wide down the front stretch to being just 2 in some sections, as you have the track and then the exit of pit road. As we have rolled on board Philippe Lambert, you can see the white line on the edge of the screen that just cuts off, and right before you turn in for one of the few short circuits around here. This is the place, though, where we're going to be seeing a lot of these drivers really opening up the taps and using that slipstream to their advantage. And we can be seeing battles going 3, 4, if these guys aren't brave enough, potentially even 5 wide down into the hairpin at the end of the straight.
Yeah, that is one of those scary prospects, isn't it? I mean, we see a similar sort of thing happen whenever these guys go to the Nordschleife, for example. Heading down the Dottengo, you can get a slipstream pass done, and then the car behind can get a slipstream pass back in reply as well, coming down into the final few corners there. So I have to wonder if there's going to be a bit of slingshotting, a bit of trading for position down into the hairpin in this particular event. But of course, in lone qualifying, there's no one there to influence you, but you can still make little mistakes, just like Philippe just did.
You absolutely can, and those little mistakes, they will easily make or break your lap, and starting position could be crucial here in this race as well, because just because you can go, 3 or 4 wide doesn't mean you're going to have the room to do so, because drivers in front of you might be doing the same thing, just creating a massive roadblock for you behind. It does look as though Alexis Tapiavico will be the first of the drivers to come across the line. He's just now through the final series of corners here, coming up now to the final 2 that just runs along that quarter-mile drag strip on the front straightaway.
Just one more corner to go, swings his way through there, out onto the exit curb he goes, and now across the line, just shy of 2 minutes there. 1:58.723 is the initial baseline that people have to chase, and it's already been surpassed by a good handful of drivers. Benny Simonson going to the top of the timing order here, at least initially. Philippe Lambert, yeah, that was a poor lap. He actually brought it down on towards pit lane. He actually did not, that lap did not count, so he'll have to start near enough towards the back of the grid at the moment. So there's Loris Amadio heading his way through that fast right-hander now in towards the arena section, that on-camber left-hander right at the, the start of the final sector of the lap. You've got this little S's section then before you get into those final couple of corners. A large amount of the grid here have not set themselves times here in qualifying. I would hazard the guess it's about a third of the grid that has not set a qualifying time just yet, and Amadio didn't make it to the line there to be able to set his time. So only 16 drivers of 23 setting times here today, and here's the starting grid then for this event here at Hockenheim. Benny Simonson on pole position with Sam Keatit on that front row as well. Christian Perez, Alexis Vico bring things down to P4. You got Philip Hammer, Anthony Catt cycling down through P5 and 6 respectively. Andrea Speziale, P7. You've got Joshua Dancy, P8. Sally Ferrero, P9. Remco Plesia in P10. Chris McGowan, P11. And Lorenzo Zingretti, in P12. Tellini and Maloir make up that 7th row of the starting grid here today. Kane Halliburton, Philippe Lambert, P15 and 16 for them respectively. Gonzalo Calvo, Luis Amadio down in P17, 18, and then there are lots of those drivers that did not set times. George Matuszynski, Antonio Ribalta, Daniele Fogarini, Simone Zamolo, and Hans Hoyer will be starting at the very back of the starting grid here today. So, gridding procedure underway. Just very, very quickly, Nolan, what are your expectations here for the start? Let me guess, frantic.
Yes, exactly. Complete understatement is for frantic. Expect a lot of chaos. I would not be surprised if we saw a big shunt as well down into the hairpin. We've seen it happen time and time again in different races here, whether it be in sim or in reality, and this series should be no different.
Should be no different. Drivers slowly but steadily taking themselves to the starting grid. We're just a couple of seconds away from our first ever race here at Hockenheim in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. The green flag is shown and the drivers are off the way down towards turn number 1. Benny Simonson able to get clear for the race lead. Bound for P3 though, at least briefly there and towards turn number 1, but everyone wants to get themselves single file through that fast right-hander at the start of the lap. I'm not seeing any dramas just yet, but the dramas may come in towards turn number 2 on the first lap here. Everyone on the brakes, everyone very, very careful actually, and very courteous with each other. There's no almighty sends here, at least in the first portion of the leading pack here, as now they have that huge full throttle section here through this long left-hander, and here come the moves now. The first of many, I suspect, coming down into the hairpin. Sam Keeter going for the race lead over Benny Simonson. He's nipped himself down the inside. Perez and Vico also fighting side by side there for P3. Vico on the inside. Can he get any progress done?
And so far, no overall dramas. One car does get spun around in the back. That's Hans Hoyer. Of course, a single car spin for the 23 car. Lost it on his own under braking, so no dramas apart from that minor incident. He's already gone in the way. Still single file as we throw ourselves now up for the second half of the lap. A much more clinical part of the lap, a little bit more processional as well, with a few of these more slower sweeping corners starting to try to split up the field a little bit.
Yeah, things are a little bit calmer on the first lap than I expected. I think everyone's just kind of realizing the danger of it as we head our way through towards the final sector of the lap now, in towards that on-camber hairpin through the arena section. You can carry a lot of speed through there more than you think you can under any normal circumstances, due to the camber of the corner helping you around that corner, and so you can keep your momentum up as a result. But now towards the end of the first lap of 25 here. This is not a double header that we've become used to here in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. It's just a single race here today. 2 pit stop windows in effect that can really shake things up.
Those 2 pit stops are definitely going to be crucial for these drivers, particularly that second one. Looks like Spezial is under fire for just behind Joshua Dancy. Have a look down the inside, just up front as well. Alexis Tapiavico trying to fend off Philip Hammer, but there is that swap for position. Dancy getting the run on Spezial as the 251 car got a bad run through turn number 1. I think might have gotten too much of the curb and stepped the back end out really sideways. And once again, we blast our way down the long, long straightaway with the ever-feared hairpin.
Yeah, who's going to move to the inside this time around? Looks like there are moves being made. A couple of drivers looking towards the inside, especially in that second pack as well. We're going to see 3 wide back there coming down in towards the hairpin. Fantastic stuff. Oh, Vico pushing very wide in that leading pack. There's still 3 wide in the second pack, though. It's all chaotic and it's all the action happening right now as the front pack gets single file. The second pack, though, involving the likes of Joshua Dancy, Plesjes, Benzale, they're all still scrapping. Kane Halliburton's in the thick of this as well. This is crazy fighting here on lap number 2 of a 25-lap event.
Spezial got muscled out wide, off and on to the rumble strips, off track by, I believe, Plesjes. Now we're 3 wide again. Halliburton with the dive to the inside. Your points leader trying to pick up some more spots here in this one. Spezial continuing to fight the outside line. The 251 car desperately trying to hold on to whatever spots he can get. He is going to cover up Halliburton. Now down the outside goes Giuseppe Tolini, taking another spot from Remco Plesjes. And one car getting off into the grass. That's going to be Philippe Lambert, who's working his way through the field. He's just lost a handful of spots as well as we dart ourselves back down for that front straightaway.
The action doesn't relent here in pack number 2. This is for positions 7 and back here at the moment. That's where most of the action has been happening, and I get the feeling these guys won't be done in any short time frame whatsoever. So they're going to continue this drafting sequence down in towards turn number 2 here on lap number 3 of the event. No one really looking towards the inside to make a pass through there. I think it's mostly because if you get a poor run through these through turn 2 and 3, then you're going to have poor speeds coming onto this very long back straight, which is where you want to have that sort of advantage.
Got to make sure that you get the speed, and even in the front field, we've been seeing cars, not being very, very aggressive up in the front there, as Benny Simonson going to try to get a run here on Sam Keetert, and Keetert is going to go around the outside for the race lead. 3 wide again, just in the back. A lot of these drivers certainly being as tight as they possibly could get. Spezial now in a tangle with Loris Amadio trying to fend off the 255 machine. Blissier just waiting in the wings as well. Chris McGowan has kind of backed off of this field here. Decided to kind of take it a little bit easier, let the guys in front start to scrap themselves out. This time, though, not 3 wide going into the section. They are going to keep the... Oh, look out! And that is Tellini that just got hit. And that's a big shot there for Tellini, and I think that was Special as well.
Yeah, Special is involved in it. There they are. As they take the trip through the runoff area, back onto circuit they go. Let's take another little look at this one to see exactly what happened here. We'll take the chopper view from up above. We're looking at Speziale, who's in that red car, down in towards the corner, front to rear contact, and you could say there's maybe a little bit of distance between the two of them there as well, which is unfortunate, but sometimes these things happen in online racing. We do have to deal with them, but an unfortunate instant there through the arena section that time.
Special didn't help things either by running over the nose cone of Giuseppe Tellini as well as he was trying to get back going. So now both cars have completely demolished suspensions. They're still limping it back to pit road, but they'll be able to get there with no further dramas, it would appear. Battle for second is starting to pick up, it would seem. Christian Perez up to third. He's trying to reel in Benny Simonson, your former race leader, just 1 lap ago. Simonson, in turn, is trying to get back past Sam Keeter to maybe find the lead back once more. Alexis Tabiavico, Philip Hammer, Anthony Catt, and Joshua Dancy also running in this train before you look back to Kane Halliburton in the 8th position, but he's also starting to pull a gap on 9th place in the second train just behind.
Yeah, the separation continuing here at the very front. Perez, low, going very, very aggressively towards driver's right-hand side to be able to make this move happen down in towards the hairpin, but he's being challenged by Vico around the outside, trying to make some progress. Anthony Catt similarly so as well. Multiple cars deciding to basically go right out into that runoff there through the hairpin, but no further dramas here. Lots of different lines being taken there through the right before they hit the brakes into the left, but everything is still maintaining the status quo at the moment, at least in this leading pack. Let's take a look back to that second pack, where it's currently now Kane Halliburton leading the way, although that pack's kind of fractured at the front a little bit.
It certainly is. It's really a 2-car break between Halliburton and Loris Amadio just in the front of that train. And I have a feeling that Amadio's actually kind of waited in behind Halliburton. He had the opportunity to make the look for the position this time, last time by down for the hairpin, but decided to stay behind because he realizes if he sits behind Halliburton, it helps both of them out because they can use each other as a bit of a draft train down these longer straightaways, just start to slowly reel in Joshua Dancy and the rest of the 7-car train just in front of them. And you can see they're already starting to close it significantly. They're going to be catching them by the end of this next lap here.
Possibly. We'll keep an eye on it and see if they're able to join in the fray at the very front of the field there. The front pack is about 7 cars strong at the moment, and I get the feeling, like you said, Kane Halliburton and Amadio have all the chances to be able to tag on to this, and they pretty much are. Coming in through the first sector here, they've done very well in terms of keeping themselves in the draft of that leading pack and keeping themselves in contention, because you know how these races go. Sometimes if you're not in this leading pack, well, your chances to win the race are slim to none.
There goes Christian Perez looking for the second place around Benny Simonson. Simonson decided not to make the look. Falling with him is going to be Alexis Tapiavico. So they're going to both try to pick up second place here down into the hairpin. Simonson's going to lose out on second for sure. And he's going to be in that fight with Vico for third, but doesn't look like he'll be able to get it. In fact, he's going to try to challenge Perez here, potentially around the outside for second, but decides not the best to go for that one. Did not have the momentum he really needed. That is kind of allowed Keeter to build a small gap, but it is not going to be nearly enough to break away. Oh, lock up there. Big time for Perez as he tries to avoid slamming in the back of Keeter. Good job on Perez, though, to get that car stopped in time.
I want to take another look at this one to see exactly, well, the onboard here with Christian Perez. This is the run coming out of that hairpin. Let's see how close he really got to the back of Sam Keeton there into the heavy braking zone. You see late on the brakes here, and oh my word, he really had to stand on it to be not running into the back of the race leader there. That was close.
Uh-oh, Chris McGowan Hamlin has problems. Severe floor damage for the 42 car. There are sparks flying for the underside. It's scraping along the ground. I'm also noticing Simone Zamolo no longer has a rear wing on his machine. So we have potentially had another incident here between the 256 car and the 42 as Chris McGowan takes that machine down pit road. I believe this was entering the arena section here. So we'll take a look back at this, see what happened in this one. They were side by side coming through there, and McGowan's just going to slide wide out and run over the back end.
Yeah, 2 into 1 doesn't go, and severe damage to both cars there in that situation. We'll just take another look at it to see if we can get a little bit of a better angle. There we go. Oh, I think McGowan just got up over the curb a little bit, spat him out towards the outside, and that was straight into the path of another driver, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely not an ideal situation for McGowan. They're going 3 wide for Secondo down into turn number 2. Alexa Piavico backs out, but this is a Hornet sets of cars back here. Halliburton and his running partner Amadio have constantly trained there. The 2 cars at the very tail end there, so it's starting to kick off here. Still side by side for fourth. As believe we got here Philip Hammer trying to fend off Alexa Piavico around the outside of the right-hand kink into the braking zone, and Vico's still going to try to fight the outside line. He's actually going to make that one work, I think.
Yeah, he's going to try it. He'll have the inside for the next corner. He can swing his way by, and he's able to gain the position. Great stuff there from Alexis Vico, and Anthony Cat is now smelling some blood in the water. Hammer had his momentum absolutely ruined by that sequence of battling. Careful, boys, with the gravel on the driver's left-hand side there. You certainly don't want to be dipping 2 tires into that one, let me tell you. But we'll have to see if that has any sort of influence later on in the race. But now this pack is indeed 9 cars strong. So Halliburton and Amadio certainly involved in this. Who's that coming down on towards pit lane? That's Anthony Cat coming down in for a very early start.
Well, remember, this happened in Mid-Ohio as well. We saw a couple of drivers that came down pit road, and one of them actually came about several seconds in front of the leaders and went through to take that victory. Of course, this is a much more draft-heavy track than Mid-Ohio is, so but now kind of brings up the question, do you need a drafting partner? He does have Felipe Barrett just behind him, but he might have to back off a little bit in order to really be able to benefit from the draft that these two can work with each other on these long straightaways.
I mean, by our calculations, technically the pit lane window opens at lap number 5, but we didn't really see much of anyone come down in at that point. They're preferring to go slightly longer than what the pit stop window is suggesting here, with most drivers still out here. We expect the end of the pit window is at lap 10, as these guys continue to have their scraps here. Vico still trying to fend off Hammer. As Hammer, is he going to be able to retake the position that he lost just 1 lap ago? Looks like he has. Swings by around the outside of Vico, so a little bit of give and take going on here.
And all that has allowed Benny Simmons to retake the race lead up at the front end of the train. You can see Halliburton trying to get a run on Joshua Dancy just behind. Side by side for the lead though. Sam Keeter trying to go around the outside of Benny Simonson. Keeter's going to take the wise move there and back out. Recognizes not the best move to try to go around the outside of that one. We already saw what happens when a couple cars try to go side by side through there, and you end up just getting a little bit too friendly with the curves.
Yeah, you really do. You have to be careful. You can't afford to get the car unsettled, and especially when most drivers are in such close proximity. Look at the dive there from Benny Simonson. That was huge. It was a huge attempted move, but Benny Simonson is just going to dive down on towards the safety of pit lane there, and hopefully get the car stopped. It looked a bit squirrely on the brakes coming in towards those yellow cones there, but another couple of drivers heading their way in. Simonson has Hammer for company this time down on towards pit lane.
So that kind of splits up the front field now. There's a bit of a gap now between first, second, and then third, fourth, and fifth. Just behind. Dante is just barely clinging on to the 6th position as well, trying to reel these guys in. So the field here is still about 6 cars strong, which is a good running order for these guys to kind of be able to run themselves in. But second and first place definitely have a bit of an advantage here over Alexis Vico. So it's no surprise to see that Christian Perez is going to try to look for the outside here of Sam Keeter, who, let's be honest, in these cars down that straightaway, you really are just a sitting duck. I mean, there's a reason why these guys aren't really trying to defend for those positions at the moment. There's nothing you can do to stop them from taking it, because they're going to get it one way or another.
Yeah, they really are. And I'm just going to have a cycle back very quickly here. I know it's side-by-side action here at the very front, but I want to see how everyone came out in relation to those drivers that had pitted already. Benny Simpson did come out ahead of Anthony Cat, by the way. That's what you can see on your screen. Philip Hammer even further back, actually surrendering the position to Anthony Cat. There is a very short stop, though, for Cat. 11.1 seconds compared to the 12.5 that Simonson and Hammer were able to do. So maybe a bit more fueling shenanigans here, but we've already seen fueling shenanigans here in this series, Nolan. We saw it at Imola, and well, just look at how that worked out.
Simone Zamolo has more trouble. This time it's a lot more significant damage with the 256, and I believe this all started actually in the hairpin and then kind of accumulated in the right-hand king right after that. So the 256 was already involved in this earlier today, missing that rear wing. Now you can see his right rear suspension is all out of shape. So let's back this up here. This is down into the hairpin. He's side-by-side with the 74 car here of Matuszynski here. And right about there's the initial contact that kind of broke the left rear suspension. But this continues on, actually, towards the kink, because there was a bit more contact there, I think, because Hans Hoyer looks like he might have gotten a piece of it as well.
Let's have a look. Hans Hoyer, no, it was the driver ahead of Hans Hoyer, actually. It was that, we'll have to try and track down who exactly that was, but that was, yes, third party getting themselves involved in there. And we'll cycle things back just to see, but yeah, Zamolo, just like on the racing line a little bit there. The car behind going straight in. That's the 249, by the way. So that is going to be Rebelta that picked up that little bit of contact. We'll cycle things just that little bit further back so we can get Rebelta's view of it and just see how surprised he was.
I do want to point out here that he did a good job there to actually hang on to the car despite having two broken suspensions on the back end. That was some great driving there, and just the smallest of taps there. Yep, that's. I think at this point it's safe to say that Zamolo is pretty much done for the day here. I mean, he's gotten now. Well, he had two left rear and right rear suspensions broken. He actually is coming out of the pits though again with a fresh rear window. Looks like. Oh yes, that's right. I forgot. The series does have those fast repairs, doesn't it?
Yep, just one. So you can, if you're able to limp it back to the pits, then, well, you can get the fast repair sorted. And I think the beneficial thing for Zamolo here is that that instant happened basically inside the pit window, so it's basically a free fast repair. So he can pit around about on schedule and not lose the time required to come back in again for the repair if it was in the middle of a stint.
Pretty good luck there, in all honesty. So this leaves 7 cars now that have yet to come down to end. Stop. Loris Embadillo is going to come in this time by out of the 4th position in the train. He's going to take it down to the lane. So this leaves now 6 more cars out there that have yet to stop. Those drivers are Sam Keeter, Halliburton, Vico, Dancy, Danielle Frugierini, and then, of course, Antonio Rebalta that have yet to come in as well. The 249 car is staying, looks like he was intending to stay out there a little bit longer despite having that contact with Zamolo just one lap before, so the damage to him must not be too bad.
Yeah, certainly something to keep an eye on there is you certainly don't want any sort of damage around here, at least aerodynamic damage around here to put a little bit more drag on that car. So speed down the straights is everything here. Although there isn't that much aero to be damaged here on these cars that would give that big of a concern with the straight line speeds. But yeah, into the hairpin these guys go then. Keita still holding on towards the very front of the field in the race lead there. Halliburton following very, very closely indeed. This is where we are starting to come towards the end of the pit window here. Lap 10 is about the maximum that these guys can go, although wouldn't put it past any of these drivers to push it that one more, especially if they've been doing a good amount of fuel saving in the draft here. I don't suspect Keita or Halliburton will be able to go the extra lap, but maybe Vico, maybe Dancy will be able to, but we'll just have to see.
Well, Halliburton has been clutch and coasting in his number 12 machine there, so I think he might be trying to go for that extra lap. And when it comes to stops or race like this where you have to make those stops, you kind of get into a Formula E mindset back where they had the car change. if you want to go an extra lap, make sure you have enough fuel to go and push hard on the extra lap. Because if you don't manage to do that, and you still have like a lot of excess fuel in the tank, but not enough to make that extra lap, well, you have it driving right. And wow, that was a late entry there for Keaton. He gets into the grass as well on the way into pit road, and he's just gonna barely lock it up. Sam Keaton with a very bold pit entry there as he leads the field down.
Yeah, Keaton really trying to gain as much time there on pit entry as he now tried to find his pit stall here at the very end of the pit lane at Hockenheim here. As Keaton, there we go, just about gets it stopped there, and he can get his service done. But it was a very, very sketchy entry to the pit lane there for Sam Keaton, really trying to carry as much speed as possible, because you know that you can't leave time on the table when it comes to your pit lane entry here. But there, oh, it's a long stop though for Sam Keaton. He might have sped on pit lane, and it's let everyone else through. Where do they come out in relation to Simonson and co though? No, well, Simonson's so far down the road compared to these guys.
2.1 seconds for Benny Simonson, who was well clear of the draft here from Philip Hammer. 2 seconds behind him, so that is definitely a huge run there for Benny Simonson, who looks like he played that pit strategy off perfectly. Right, if I'm wrong, I think he was one of those drivers, though, that did make that very early stop.
He's so still on pit lane.
Oh, is he really?
55
just now
seconds. That tells me he might have got unsafe pit entry as well as the speed. Because usually a stop-go penalty for speeding is like 15 seconds right there. That's way more than a 15-second penalty. So we'll have to go back and take a look at this one to see exactly what the situation is for Keita as he came down on towards pit lane. We'll cycle back just a little bit further there. So here's the onboard.
It might have been excessive speed as well, because the pit speed here is 30 miles an hour. He was almost 10 over on pit entry, which is almost about 20 kilometers an hour over, which is significant in the eyes of most motorsports sanctioned bodies in the world. So take a look. The entry's already late, but then he dips half the car into the grass, and now he's trying to lock it up. Missing limit is there, and still going 37 upon entry. Now, just there, he got it slowed down to 30, and that is all she wrote. So Sam Keaton today just goes from being fantastic, well, now it may as well be just, it's gone so wrong for the 28.
So wrong in a blink of an eye as well. A miscalculation on the brakes into the pit lane. You get stung with that penalty. I think it was a little bit more as well from him, to be honest, because again, if we see a 15-second stop-go penalty added on top of a normal pit stop time here, that would be around about 27, 28 seconds stationary on the pit lane. Keita was 55 seconds stationary on the pit lane, so there must have been something a little bit more involved there.
I wouldn't be sure from where, though, because last I checked, I mean, if you dip 2 tires into the grass there, just on the left side where he did, iRacing still won't get you for that because you're not in pit road necessarily. So I'm not sure where he would have managed to pick up the other 30 seconds or so from. Looks like the battle could be on, though, here for positions, just for 4th, 2nd, and 3rd. So those completely out of order. Philip Hammer and Perez and Cat all running in a line. It looks as though Anthony Cat has just fallen back 2 spots as well as both Philip Hammer and Perez go by.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting dynamic, I think, for this middle stint, because you've got this trio here for P2, 3, 4. They can kind of fuel save off of each other and lop off a lot of time for the final stops. Meanwhile, Benny Simonson, we'll take a look at him. He's out there basically all on his own for all intents and purposes. You see the pack of 3 behind him. You know, that is about 2.3 seconds behind him, which is a bit of a country mile in terms of Skip Barber racing. So even though it's close in every other series, maybe not so much here. So he's going to have to be able to do some clear air saving to make sure his fuel numbers are good for the end of this event. Otherwise, he's going to take forever in that final stop. And, well, the advantage swings back in the favor of Hammer, Perez, Cat as those cars behind.
And the next pit window here, well, the next pit window here is opening in about 3 laps time as well. So depending on how early these guys came in, we could be seeing these guys coming in just a few laps as well. But of course, it's unlikely to see them because we did see a lot of guys stretching it up from laps really 8 to about 10 there in this last fuel stop run. So about another 5 to 7 laps, so that's when we can expect to see drivers coming down for their second stops of the day. Giuseppe Tolini is making that second stop, though, early. He's down to pit road as well in the 250 machine, so that is a very interesting call from Tolini. I wonder if there has been something that has happened to him, or if this is actually a scheduled stop, because I don't think he'd be able to make it to the end from here.
No, I don't think so. Second pit stop window is around about lap 15 to 20, and he's coming down in a lap 13. So, yeah, this is an unscheduled stop, I would have thought, for Tolini, but we'll have to see if he is able to get to the end. It would require a monumental effort to be able to get it to the end from here, bordering on impossible, but yeah, we'll see. Especially if he doesn't have a drafting partner, he definitely won't be able to get to the end. So, yeah, that's a bit of a weird one there. A bit of a pit stop that's quite off cycle compared to everyone else here. But
you know
yeah.
what?
Go on.
He got a penalty. That was a 17-second stop, and he didn't take tires. That was a stop and hold penalty for Tolini.
Speeding on pit exit, I suppose.
That, or he just didn't serve a slowdown penalty. It will bop you for that if you decide not to take those slowdown penalties, or if you can't do them in time. You got about 30 seconds to serve them. Might have got one and didn't serve it in time. Of course, he might have also gotten... No, I was thinking it might be on the pit exit, but that doesn't make any sense either, because you only have 3 laps to serve those penalties. He's been out there now for about 5 laps, well, half a lap now, but that's a weird one.
It is. There's a couple of weird things that has happened so far this race, and well, maybe they're just still coming thick and fast, but you see this leading, well, not so much leading trio, but the trio from P2 and back, continuing on their charge to try and catch up to Rennie Simonson, who still remains about 2.6 seconds ahead of these guys, so not making too much progress, but sometimes the slow and steady and more strategic style of race actually wins the event outright, so certainly don't count them out at this stage. Simonson will have a little bit of a trickier time here in the final stop due to not being able to draft off the back of someone.
And another driver that's coming down pit lane is Andrea Spezial, who is just now coming down. He is 10 laps on his stint. So this is a scheduled stop here, actually, for the 251. He's already been out there for 10 laps as is. Remember, he came down early on because he did have that damage he had to work out. He's trying to make this one last year to the end of the race. So Spezial is going to be in, and this will be an effort for the 251 car to try to push that car to the end of the race from here.
Yeah, again, like I said, the start of the pit stop window is in another lap's time. So, yeah, we'll have to see if he's able to get to the end here. I don't suspect it, especially, again, like I said, doesn't have a drafting partner out there. But, again, we've seen weirder things already. But this race bubbling along quite nicely at this point. We are, of course, got ourselves well past the halfway point at this stage. So lap number 14 of 25 here at the moment. Still got one more scheduled stop to go for these guys, and the pit window for that one is actually going to be opening at the very end of this lap right here as these guys head their way across the line. So around about lap 15 to 20 is going to be when we suspect drivers are going to be coming in for their final stops and for the amount of fuel that they need for the end here. And it's going to be very, very telling the swings in terms of lap times here at the very, very final stop. Who's been able to save the most? Who's going to be able to leapfrog themselves to the front? That's the question. Simonson, though, in the race lead at the moment, has been doing very, very well to manage this gap back to the 3 behind him.
Indeed he has, and these 3-car battles that we've been starting to see here between Hammer, Paris, and Cat, it's really being mirrored all over the racetrack at the moment. You got these three cars running 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I know 5th and 6th are close. They're just in the shot behind them, and just behind those guys is 7th, 8th, and 9th. So those are really the top 10 battles all in one shot. 10th and 11th are also side by side at the moment, but they're just kind of doing the classic drafting swapping technique down that very long straight. From there, it's actually single file all the way back to 16th place, who's running with 17th and 18th as well. So the field is definitely a lot more split up now that the next pit window has gone through. Do you wonder that has got to do in part with the fact that a lot of the drivers came in at different laps, so drivers are able to get undercuts done on each other and be able to get into some clean air, so they weren't focusing on guys diving up their insides every corner?
Yeah, we did see a rather large spread in terms of the exact lap that people wanted to pit on, especially in that leading pack where we saw basically 1 or 2 drivers come down in every single lap for that entirety of the pit window. So there's a lot of sort of differences, at least on the exact lap in the pit stop strategies here. And I think that'll carry over into the next set of stops as well. But yeah, I think that is kind of the main cause of the separation that we're seeing here already, which is kind of unexpected, because I would have thought at Hockenheim, the draft being so powerful down that back straight, then maybe the cars will be able to keep themselves together a little bit more. But it seems like because of the way the pit stops happened, it hasn't really quite worked out that way.
No, it really hasn't played out the way they were really hoping it would. So we'll just have to wait and see here how this will kind of play out for a lot of these drivers going forward. Maybe the second pit stop window could potentially see these battles actually close on in, because the spread is also going to mean that these guys that pitted earlier, they're going to be coming in again. So that is going to give the guys that pitted in behind them a chance to get themselves into clean air. So we could very well see things shift in the other direction, or Simonson could just nail the pit strategy and end up even further out in front from Philip Hammer, especially if Hammer comes under fire from Anthony Cat, who's up in third at the moment, and is now going to go side by side with him as well for second.
Yeah, so Perez opening the door on the driver's right-hand side, just to let the, or rather, that was Hammer opening the door on the driver's inside there, and letting Anthony Cat through for all intents and purposes. So Cat now leads that 3-car train for P number 2 on lap number 16. And well, again, these guys are actually still dropping time actually to Simonson. So Simonson's running faster in clear air all on his own than what these guys in this trio are able to manage, slipstreaming off of each other and slingshotting off of each other. So that one's a little bit surprising to me.
I think part of the problem is the fact that Anthony Cat has never been close enough to be able to get the run on Simonson that he needs. And it also doesn't help that these guys, not only are they drafted with each other, but they're also battling with each other as well. It's important to note as well. I mean, these guys have been going side by side with each other just about every single lap. And that is a big problem in of itself. But here we go. Second round of stops on the way to the top 4, all coming in at the same time.
Yep, here we go. So Simonson in. We didn't quite see that, but there he is on the left-hand side here, side by side between Hammer and Perez down the pit lane here at the moment. Neck and neck between the two of them, and Anthony Cat is also very, very close here in the grand scheme of things. But here come the stops. Then we are expecting that longer stop from that man right there, Benny Simonson. But how long is it going to be, though, as we're waiting for those timers to tick up and waiting for the final amount of fuel to go in? Who's going to come off of pit lane first? It is Benny Simonson actually beating all of them out there. But that is a very, very quick stop there for Benny Simonson. Anthony Cat, 16 seconds on his stop. He comes out now. Hammer actually got the jump over Cat in that pit stop phase there. So surprisingly enough, Benny Simonson still able to beat them all off of the lane, even though he had no opportunity to get fuel saving behind someone in the race lead.
Here's the catch of that though. Look at how much closer Perez is now right up to Benny Simonson. Simonson did lose quite a bit of time in pit road despite being the first one off. That could be the game changer here. Perez is well clear of the draft of Philip Hammer just behind him. This could be a battle between these two drivers to the end of the race. If Perez can just barely close in with that draft, he's just ever so slightly hanging in at the tail end of it at the moment.
Yep, he is. That must have been the overall objective then. If Simonson didn't surrender the race lead due to having a longer stop, then at least be close enough that you can stick inside his slipstream and give him a big old challenge towards the end of this event. And I think Christian Perez has just about been able to do that. If he's able to keep himself close here, coming through the final sector here and then in towards the first sector, and he's able to secure himself that slipstream for the long back straight, then he is surely in with a chance here at getting himself by Benny Simonson, but I wouldn't count out any of the other drivers at the moment. We're still yet to see about a quarter of the drivers to come down on towards pit lane just yet. There are the two leading cars at the moment of Kane Halliburton and Alexis Vico. They go out and they stay out another lap as they head their way down in towards turn number 1. So we're going to have to see how they file out in relation to everyone else here that is still yet to come down in, and of course those that have come down in already too.
So here is going to be one of the battles then down this very long straightaway. This is between Alexis Vico and Kane Halliburton, the two current race leaders on track, but they're likely going to cycle things back out amongst themselves, back into the proper order of things. Notice how Vico staying in behind Halliburton, though, not electing to really fight this one out too much. He's trying to save some time here, maybe save some fuel as well, so they can leapfrog Halliburton in the pits and potentially come out in front of him as well.
Certainly a possibility, but we'll see how it all files out here. Of course, you know, it's always these fuel games here in these 2K Skip Barber races, especially these longer non-double headers. Meanwhile, further back in the shot there, you see Anthony Cat and Philip Hammer going side by side, and Cat able to get cleanly through. So another swap of position between those two there as they try to work together to try and lock onto the back of Simonson and Perez now. But again, it's going to be very, very tough. They need to get themselves organized, and Perez hasn't made too many inroads in terms of Benny Simonson's position right now, still about 1.2, 1.3 seconds behind. The draft does extend that far back here in the Skip Barber cars, but you're not feeling too much of the effect from that far back, even though it exists.
It's enough that you can stay with them, but not necessarily enough that you can catch up. Oh, that's going to hurt him as well. Perez way off the track. That is going to hurt him big time. He has just lost out. Surprisingly little there. Still 1.36 seconds between them. Did not lose a lot of time at all, but it's still going to hurt his run, as now the gap is starting to stand up to about 1.4, 1.5 seconds. Oh, and he's caught the curb again there. Oh, I think that might have been a slowdown penalty there. And now he's off again. Oh, Perez just shot himself in the foot in the final half of this lap here.
Yeah, we saw the first instance going wide here. Now looking for the brakes into the long on-camber left-hander. He's fine through there, but what happens a little bit later on? Well, we'll just watch through, as Perez might have just blown his chance at the race lead here with these mistakes. Just clatters the curb. That's the exit curve there coming through the second to last corner, and then that's just messed up his line through the final corner as well. So it's just made a whole mess of it, and that's a whole bunch of lost time right now to Benny Simonson. As well, it wasn't as much lost time than I would have thought. He only lost about half a second through that entire sequence, but half a second could be all that matters, especially since he's not going to be feeling the effects of the draft anymore.
Oh, that is just such a shame there. Of course, this is exactly what Benny Simonson wanted to see in that big battle, as now Perez is 1.6 seconds back and continuing to drop. That draft was the only thing that Simonson had to worry about. Well, not anymore. That 22 car is definitely going to be clean sailing really to the end of this race, barring himself making any major mistakes that could have an impact on this race.
Yeah. It's always interesting to see the dynamics here as both the race leaders at the moment dive their way down on towards pit lane. But the important thing for these guys is where they come out in relation to the likes of Simonson and Perez and Hammer and Cat as well. Because the strategies have been quite varied here today. Some drivers coming down in earlier, some drivers deciding to push the stints out. And these are going to be the final sets of stops for Vico, Halliburton, Fogarini, Rebelta also in as well. So there is a Benny Simonson. Is he going to re-inherit the race lead as he heads his way across the line? Yeah, the answer to that is going to be yes, and by quite a margin as well. Alexis Vico comes off of the pit lane there, first in that little gaggle of cars, going to be cycled back into 5th place here behind Anthony Cat. So there's Kane Halliburton there, and Joshua Dancy a little bit further down the order as well. So the front runners really not threatened by that group of cars that came down in that time.
And that's barely a surprise as well, based on how big of a gap they had from just the second or the first stint alone. So these guys are going to have a pretty easy run for here to the end of this race. There is a battle on course. That is Anthony Cat once again swapping places with Philip Hammer in what is at the moment the battle for the final podium position out there. That is one of those fights that, oh, hello. Cat taking a really wide line on the exit of the hairpin there.
Yeah. He's got to be careful with that, though, because he can just so easily give the momentum to the car behind if you just step a foot out of the line. Of course, you've got that you got an instant point for doing that as well, so that certainly doesn't help, especially if you're close in terms of the instant limit. But yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason why Anthony Cat would be close to that at this point in the race, but still, those things do add up in the end, and at least at this stage, maybe you start to use the off tracks that you have to spare, at least in terms of the instant limit, as well, you save them up for the end of the race, so you can actually tease the track limits a little bit more, a little bit later on in the race compared to what you could do earlier.
Just make sure that if you're going to try that, don't run so far out that you get yourself a slowdown penalty. People often make the misconception that iRacing just gives you slowdown penalties if you cut the corner. No siree. They can give it to you if you run too wide and pick up time there as well, depending on how far out you go. I think turn 1 might honestly be a pretty good example of that, in fact, as well. So we'll have to, it's one of those things you really got to kind of be careful for, especially on exit of some of these faster corners that lead into their own little sectors.
Yeah, and that's the preferred philosophy that iRacing has gone with regards to track limits, especially on some of the newer tracks. So think about Le Mans, for example, where they prefer to police the track limit with slowdown penalties rather than with instant points. But here comes the battle for P3 once again. It's the orchestrated swap between these two that we've become used to seeing. So Hammer up into that third spot. Cat will drop back into fourth. There's a battle behind these guys between Halliburton and Vico as well. Those guys will get themselves sorted out with Halliburton sending it down the inside at the hairpin. He will get past quite cleanly. Meanwhile, battle for the race lead, that gap has extended just that little bit more. It's up to 2 seconds now between Benny Simpson and Christian Perez. This has been a mega drive from Benny Simpson, basically on his own throughout the entirety of that second stint, yet still was going fast enough to extend the gap and to make sure that since he had to take more fuel, he still had that space to work with to those cars behind and still come out ahead of them. That's brilliant drive. That's brilliant, like, sort of strategic mind as well, and knowing what is needed at the right time.
Oh, it was absolutely a fantastic drive there for Benny Simonson. It's going to be a good points haul for him today as well. So it's one of those drives you definitely don't see it all too often. Usually these battles are a heck of a lot more closer, but I think that just goes to show just how good Benny Simonson has been so far in this race. We are in for a pretty big point shakeup at the end of the day as well. Of course, Sam Keeter with 262 points in second place. He is currently marked as one of those few DNFs. Kane Halliburton as well. He's down to 6th place so far for starting at 14th, so he's not going to get as many points this week as well. Francisco is a no-show, so Philippe Lebert also far down in the 9th position from 5th place in points. Alexis Tapia Vico, though, is in 5th, so we could be very well seeing Vico moving himself further up in those standings after the end of this one.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good drive for him as well. He's currently in the battle, just sort of right at the back of this shot there with Kane Halliburton. But it seems like these duos are preferring to get these the sort of slingshot strategy going here down the pit straight, not the pit straight, excuse me, down the back straight. But it hasn't exactly been successful. They're not really going that much faster than the cars ahead of them that are just running in on their own in clear air. So maybe it's not entirely useful for these guys. Although, saying that, P3, P4 are only about now 1.5 seconds off of Perez for P2. So if they're able to just push it just that little bit further, just gain that little bit more time over the next 1 or 2 laps, then maybe you could say they're in contention for P2 as well. And well, I think that would be kind of the main grandstand finish that we'll expect to see here, because Benny Simpson's just kind of running away with things at the very front of the moment.
I mean, here's the thing with the whole sling drafting thing that these guys are trying to do here. You got to really make sure. Whoa.
Perez went out into the gravel again. Yeah.
He's pushing it way too hard. He's only going to end up costing himself at this point. He's trying to catch Simmons is what he's trying to do, but he's only cost himself more time, and he's falling further and further back in the clutches of Anthony Kahn and Philip Hammer, who are doing a good job of making that strategy work. That's the point I was going to try to make, was the fact that if you want to make that strategy work, you've got to commit to it, and you need to be able to do it at the absolute right moment. And that's so far what these guys have been doing. In skip barbers, it's very, very difficult to be able to really time their moves well, primarily just because you spend so much time at the draft. It's hard to tell when you're going to gain more or lose more by doing it. These guys, where they have been slowly reeling them in, and now Perez is right in their clutches as well.
Yeah, and now that gap is down to about a second between Anthony Kahn and Anthony Kahn and Christian Perez. So Perez is now coming under threat as that gap now dips to 0.6 of a second. So Perez just had an absolutely awful first couple of corners there, and has really dropped back into the clutches now as Anthony Kahn continues to make the progress with Philip Hammer in tow. He's going to get a run of speed here down in towards the hairpin. Here comes Anthony Kahn around the outside for P number 2 in the dying moments of the race. Just a couple of laps to go. Perez able to hold on the inside there, or almost squeezes Anthony Kahn out into the runoff there, but Kahn has the space to work with. He's able to continue the momentum here around the outside at this right-hand kink. Careful not to push too wide there. Able to keep it within the track bounds. Now we can dive down the inside at the left, and that's Anthony Kahn up into P2, although Perez will still try and fight it back on the outside, but he has nothing to work with.
So coming up here with just 2 laps remaining, this is about to get intense here in the battle for second place. Don't forget Philip Hammer is going to be trying to pick up that second position as well. This will be a great points haul for him today. He's trying to get himself further up in these standings as well, currently sitting 7th place, and definitely trying to extend the gap over Anthony Kahn as well. So you got 7th and 8th place, just 2 points apart from each other, fighting here for these final spots in the dying moments of the race. So this could be a very intense fight with Christian Perez just kind of caught in between them at the moment. So what can Anthony Kahn do here? Can you hang on to the second position until the end of the race?
Well, he has to deal with now the 2 guys behind him having the big old slipstream coming down the back straight. So let's see how he deals with this one. Maybe being in this position on the second to last lap isn't too bad, as he gets a huge amount of oversteer coming on the exit of turn 1 there. So he can maybe just afford to lose maybe 1-2 positions coming down the back straight this time around. But then on the final lap, he'll be that car third in line that can get the double toe, and maybe he'll be able to make something work from there. All of these drivers, though, will be well aware of that. So it's going to be a big old mind games, a big old game of chess between all of these guys for the battle for P2 at the moment. Meanwhile, Benny Simmons, and he's just checked out. He's playing 4D chess here at the very front of the field, leaving all these guys in his dust. But it's all up for grabs for P2, and no passes being made in towards the hairpin that time around.
No passes that time around. They're trying to set each other up for the last lap of the race, and I think the case with that is Perez does not want to be the driver that's headed up the train when we get around to the white flag. He wants to be the driver on the offensive here, so Anthony Kahn is going to be the one that's going to have to really start worrying here as we come closer and closer to the white flag. Simonson now 4.4 seconds in front. No mistakes from Benny Simonson, and he is cleared to the end of this one. Anthony Kahn, Christian Perez, though, and Philip Hammer all still trying to battle for those final podium positions.
It's going to be a great battle between all 3 of these guys as Anthony Kahn pushes out into the gravel there. Perez almost followed him, by the way. Following in the tire tracks there is such a dangerous thing to do. You get fixated on the target ahead of you that you're basically copying whatever they're doing. And if they make the mistake, you might be fooled into making that same mistake as well. But Benny Simonson, there he is, coming out of the final corner. He heads his way across the line to start the final lap here, but it's the battle behind him that we're focusing on between Kahn, Perez, and Hammer. What's going to happen in this situation? They've only got 1 more to go.
1 lap remaining, so Simonson clear out in front. The battle is on for second place. Anthony Kahn, Christian Perez, Philip Hammer. Who's going to be able to come out on top in this one? Down for turn 2. No looks being made for the position yet. That's to be expected. Kahn has a bad apex, though. Loses a bit more time up to Christian Perez, so Perez will definitely have the run down the corner here. Can Philip Hammer be able to get the run? Alexis Pia goes down pit road. He's had some sort of issue, and he had to make that one final splash and dash with a pure potential penalty. Now here comes Perez, looking for the inside of Kahn. Philip Hammer trying to make it 3 wide up the middle. Downwards for Hairpin. Philip Hammer trying to get a run at it. Gets clear of Destiny Cat, but Cat's going to fight the outside line. So down with the hairpin. Cameron's going to get squeezed out by Christian Perez and makes the launch up the inside.
They're continuing to go wheel to wheel coming out of that hairpin now. Just, on this final lap, it's incredible stuff between all of them. Oh, Cat almost cuts across the nose of Perez as they head in towards the braking zone for the left hand here in the middle of the lap. Fantastic dueling. Cat is able to get himself just about into second place, but Perez is coming back at him here through the middle sector. They're still wheel to wheel, and definitely don't count Philipp Hammer out in this situation as well, because he's there. He can pick up all the pieces if it all goes sour. Now in towards the arena section for the final time in this event. The battle for P2 has been stellar, but which way does it go? Cat on the inside squeezes Perez out in towards the curve and in towards the runoff, and now Philipp Hammer, is this his time to strike in towards the final couple of corners of the race, through the penultimate corner, through the final corner? Does he have the momentum? Is there any damage to Anthony Cat? The answer to both those questions is going to be no, as Anthony Cat is able to pick up second place, but the man of the moment is about 5 seconds further down the road compared to where they were at. Benny Simonsen takes the race win here today at Hockenheim in a dominating performance for the driver of the number 22. But my word, this series delivers again with the stellar finishes.
It amazes me how week after week we come in here, and it doesn't matter how split up the field can get. Every week they provide with a stellar finish for us, and it's one of the reasons why, once again, as I said, every week, like a heckin' parakeet, I absolutely love this series because it can always provide these great finishes. This time it was Anthony Cat who was able to get over Philipp Hammer, and that could cause a change in positioning for 7th and 8th in the point standings.
We'll see the incident coming through the... Oh, it just gets a little bit tight on the inside there. Just a couple of love taps between the two of them. I'm just going to cycle it back just that little bit more to see if we can actually get a better view of it, because we need to just kind of know if there's going to be any action after the race here. It's just, Perez is trying to cut down. Anthony Cat's pushing up a little bit. They kind of go 2-into-1 there. So I would say for me, that's just kind of a racing instant, and Perez has gone off the worst there.
I completely agree with you here. I mean, these are two guys in the last lap of a race fighting for podium positions. All they're trying to do is get the biggest amount of a run possible. And in Anthony Cat's fairness, Perez was trying to kind of pinch him down there in the hairpin as well. So it's absolutely just one of those last lap racing deals. At the end of the day, Perez only lost out one spot because of it. So it was overall a very good run. And props to Anthony Cat for being able to somehow hold both drivers behind him.
Yeah, that was incredible stuff indeed. But here we go then. We'll get ourselves the final finishing results here for this event in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup at Hockenheim for the first time in series history. Benny Simonsen comes away with the race win by just over 5.5 seconds there from Anthony Cat, but that battle for P2 was absolutely fantastic. Cat comes out on top in the battle, but Philipp Hammer gets himself onto the podium as well, but Perez, well, he's unfortunately got shoved out a little bit in the middle sector and ends up finishing in P4. Kane Halliburton P5 here today with George Majazinski P6, Joshua Dancy P7, Philippe Leber P8. Remco Pleasure in P9 with Daniele Fogherini in P10 here today. Second page of the results then, Antonio Ribalta in P11, Hans Hoyer P12 today, Alexis Vico P13 with Loris Amadio in P14, Zingretti P15, Zamolo P16, Tellini in P17, McGowan P18, Spetzale P19, and Sam Keatit, who was at the very front for the vast majority of the opening stints of the event. Well, unfortunately, he had a bit of an issue on pit lane and decided to retire the car after the fact. Those drivers that also retired, Ali Favero, Alfredo Malo, and Gonzalo Calvo. A couple of big names there, especially Malo and Calvo not able to get themselves to the checkered flag here in this one. But another race, another event in the books here in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. Our first event ever at the Hockenheimring has indeed delivered the stellar racing that we expect to see from this series week in, week out. And, well, we didn't really get the 7-8 wide that we were hoping down the back straight that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, Nolan. But I think the maximum we saw was 3, but still, regardless, these guys very, very respectful in terms of their battling. That first lap was very courteous amongst all of the drivers up and down the field, because it could have seen a lot more drama than we did, but thankfully everyone able to keep their head screwed on right, and they're able to go racing, and that's just what we love to see.
And I think it's going to be very entertaining as well with what we got coming up next. Not only is it road course racing at Long Beach in California, it's also got another heat race to it. So that is about to throw a massive wrench into the works, both literally and figuratively, for a lot of drivers as they start to go head-to-head, not to mention with reverse grids as well. On a tight street circuit like Long Beach, that is going to be something spectacular. Not to mention with the combined standing starts as well.
Yeah, we can take a look at how the rest of the season works out. So like you said, well, round number 6, we go to Long Beach, which is gonna be interesting, to say the least. Street circuits always are in these things. Then you go to Summit Point, which is, well, if you like the rookie series here on iRacing, they'd be very familiar with the way Summit Point works out. Very short circuit indeed. And then we go to Suzuka for round number 8, and then we go into those run of rounds where we don't really know exactly which track we're going to, and the drivers certainly don't know either. So those are going to be our wildcard rounds, with the exception of Lime Rock Park for round number 12. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see those unknown rounds a little bit later on in the season factor in, because those sorts of rounds really promotes adaptability and getting up to speed quickly as well.
It's all about the adaptability when you get to cars like these, and that is the good thing about these cars as well, is they are very, very easy to get the hang of when you know the track layout. So if anything, it's more adapting to the track than it's going to be the car, and these drivers have shown that they are willing to race and are able to race at just about any circuit you can throw at them.
Well, that's just about all that we'll have time for here today in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. I'm just waiting to see if we're going to get any interviews in, but it's unfortunate that we're not actually seemingly going to be able to get any interviews in. None of the drivers have turned up to our TeamSpeak here, so we will wrap the show. My name's been Connery Medic, that's been Nolan Rempel. We've had another absolutely fantastic race here in the 2K Skip Barber World Cup. First ever event at Hockenheim has gone very, very well. Next time we head to our event at Long Beach, which should be a completely different beast indeed. Thank you guys very much for watching this RaceSpotTV production, and we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks' time for that Long Beach event. Bye-bye.